interesting article on the Trumpet News website today called Rising Tensions Between China and the U.S. Who Will Dominate? And I have put a link to this article in the description box below. And it's by Peter Van Halteren, and it was published today, March 17th, 2023. It says China is preparing for war. On March 7th, Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang warned that Beijing and Washington are headed for, quote, conflict and confrontation, unquote, if the United States doesn't change course. To back up this rhetoric, China is ramping up its military budget, which will increase by 7.2% this year, the highest increase in 4 years. Former Premier Li Qingguang, however you pronounce that, told the National People's Congress that the People's Libertarian Army, or PLA, should work to carry out military operations, boost combat preparedness, and enhance military capabilities. One way China intends to strengthen its position is by building an enormous nuclear arsenal. Russia and the U.S. have far greater nuclear arsenals, but China is rapidly catching up. See, I thought China would have had a bigger arsenal than Russia, but I guess not. Earlier this year, the commander for the U.S. Strategic Command warned Congress that China now has more land-based intercontinental ballistic missile launchers, or ICBM, than the United States, which is indicative of its aim to overtake America in other nuclear areas. Even in space, China is steadily working to surpass the U.S. Last year, China completed its own fully operational space station after the U.S. banned its access to the International Space Station. China has also stepped up military activities in space that challenge U.S. superiority. Counter-space operations will be integral to the potential PLA military campaigns, as China has counter-space weapons capabilities intended to target U.S. and allied satellites. The 2023 Annual Threat Assessment of the United States Intelligence Community said, China already has counter-space weapons such as electronic warfare systems, directed energy weapons, and anti-satellite missiles. If these ground-based weapons could be used to disrupt or destroy satellites that the U.S. military depends on heavily. In the Russia-Ukraine war, China also poses a potential threat. Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin sealed a no-limits partnership just before the war, which triggered great anxiety in the West. NATO is increasingly concerned that China will provide Russia with lethal aid for the Ukraine war. And remember, they're supposed to be, Xi Jinping and Putin are supposed to be meeting sometime soon. Is the U.S. doing enough to counter the threats coming from China? I don't think we are. On March 9th, the Biden administration proposed one of the nation's largest peacetime defense budgets for the Pentagon, $835 billion, up from $816 billion last year. Although the Russia-Ukraine war has garnered considerable attention, many analysts believe the U.S. should be more worried about protecting itself from China's immediate threats. We should. We are pouring all of our energy and resources into this Ukraine thing, and it's getting to the point of ridiculousness. The Pentagon's request reflects a budget that is still focused primarily on developing weapons for future wars rather than procuring weapons for near-term wars, according to the former Office of Management and Budget Defense analyst Mark Cancian. That might seem promising, but the U.S. has often shown itself to be the weaker nation in confrontations with China. This was especially clear when the U.S. military allowed a Chinese spy balloon to float over thousands of miles of U.S. heartland for more than 6 days. Between February 2nd and 8th, The Biden regime proved to be too weak-willed to use its power to shoot down the potentially dangerous balloon. If China can fly a surveillance balloon over the country for that long, what else will it get away with? And they were using the excuse, oh, if we shoot it down, it could hurt civilians. But that thing flew over tens of thousands of acres of just fields where they could have shot it down a lot sooner. In fact, it should have never even made it to our border. China has also proved to be the more belligerent power in the South China Sea. China continually antagonizes U.S. Air Force pilots patrolling the international airspace over the sea. Last month, a Chinese fighter pilot warned an American fighter pilot to keep a safe distance or you will be intercepted. A video published by Wall Street Journal in December showed a Chinese fighter jet flying as close as 20 feet from an American plane. Such confrontations have become more aggressive as China has gained control over many sections of the South China Sea. This control has been established in large part by China's campaign of building artificial islands in the region and militarizing them with anti-ship and anti-aircraft missile systems in efforts to control the hotly disputed waters. In his 2016 article, China is Steering the World Towards War, Trumpet editor-in-chief Gerald Flurry wrote, "Now that the U.S. military presence in the area has been drastically reduced, China is claiming the entire South China Sea as its own. By building artificial islands atop coral reefs in these Spratlys and installing surface-to-air missile batteries in the paracels, China is building a new strategic sea gate." See, I didn't even know that they were putting artificial islands and stuff out there, and that's getting pretty alarming. This sea passage is vitally important because it is not only resource rich, but some $5.3 trillion worth of trade passes through it every day, which accounts for about 1/3 of all global maritime trade. In Taiwan, another point of friction between the two powers, China is also determined to become the stronger nation. Ever since the Communist forces won the Chinese Civil War in 1949, China has claimed Taiwan as its own. Xi often calls for reunification and states China is willing to use military force to make this a reality. For years, China has intimidated the island by violating Taiwanese waters and airspace. In the past few weeks, China has sent 25 warplanes and 3 warships towards the island. The U.S. softly responded by deploying an additional 100 to 200 troops to the island to train Taiwanese forces for a potential Chinese offensive. Late August, tensions escalated further after the U.S. Speaker of House Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. China responded with a show of force, forming military exercises around Taiwan, launching ballistic missiles over the island, sending the warships across the Taiwan Strait, and bombarding Taiwanese government websites with an unprecedented number of cyber attacks. And I remember that because everybody was wondering if she would actually go to Taiwan or not because of the threat from China. And she did. I have to give old Nancy that one. She had balls. I don't know if I would have gone. Taiwan is a point of interest partly because of its global dominance in the semiconductor industry. U.S. companies like Apple and NVIDIA are largely dependent on Taiwan's production of semiconductors, which are found in thousands of products like computers, smartphones, medical equipment, and military hardware. If China gains control over Taiwan, it could potentially use the semiconductor industry to increase its economic hold over the United States. This is why we need to start making our own stuff here. Quit outsourcing the products, the making of the products that we need, our factories and such, and everybody, we just make all of the things that we need right here in the United States. China's increasing belligerence and America's weakening will to counter it will soon develop into an era defined in Bible prophecy. During his ministry, Jesus Christ spoke of the times of the Gentiles, an era which powerful Gentile nations will dominate. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, and that's in Luke 21:24. This prophecy is yet to be fully realized, but the rise of the Gentile nations is becoming increasingly evident. The Gentiles are people who didn't descend from the 12 tribes of ancient Israel. In end-time prophecy, Israel refers mainly to modern-day America and Britain. I don't know about that. Israel refers mainly to modern-day America and Britain. I'm going to have to look at that a little bit more closely because I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree with that. In his article, Where Are the Times of the Gentiles?, Mr. Fleury wrote, once you understand who Israel is, then you can understand how the Gentiles, the non-Israelite peoples, have started to take charge of the world right now. China's actions prove that the Gentiles are rising to power before our eyes. And this is just one of many Gentile nations growing more aggressive on the world scene. A big reason Gentile nations are rising today is because the modern-day descendants of Israel have become weak and apathetic. In Leviticus 26, God prophesies that would happen to Israel. And I will break the pride of your power, verse 19. While the U.S. possesses more military power than China, the will to use it is disappearing. Recognizing that weakness, China is asserting its power, explained Mr. Fleury. America's broken will is motivating these actions. The global power shifting away from Israel towards these other nations signals a terrifying future. Christ said it will be a time of men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And that's Luke 21:26. However, Christ also delivered spectacularly good news to occur right after the time of the Gentiles. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory, verse 27. The fulfillment of these prophecies will eventually lead to a time of great joy and happiness, Jesus Christ's second coming. So the article is very interesting, and I believe that, I believe China's probably stronger than we are, and I hate to say that because I do support and I respect our men and women in the military, and it has nothing to reflect on them, but our leadership right now is weak, and I think China is going to capitalize on that. We shall see what comes in the future. Until next time, y'all have a good day.